Welcome to the Mastercam 2023 Rollouts. My name is Patrick with the support team at Prototech Engineering. Today's video topic is going to be Mill 3D. Let's go ahead and take a look at what changed. Mill 3D seen some nice changes in 2023, so let's go ahead and take a look at what changed in Mill 3D. OptiRough enhancements. One of the biggest ones by far in 23 is going to be detect undercuts. As you can see by the picture on the top right, a lot less cuts than the picture below that, and that is by one switch in the rest material page called Detect Undercut Stock. We'll take a big look at this one to see where this one can really help us. Previous to 2023, on this part that I machined, my cycle time was 8 minutes 49 seconds. I went and reprogrammed just this section in 2023, and my cycle time went down to 8 minutes, and I could eliminate one additional tool path. So I had 5.77% of cycle time reduction just by going to Mastercam 2023 and doing the same essential tool path. So big time savings potential here, and it's great because we eliminate all of them error cuts that we had previous. 3D Auto Detect Z Heights. So this is a new switch in our steep shallow page, and we'll take a look at this, see how it works. Pretty much if you move your part around after the fact, it automatically updates the Z depth so it knows where it's at all times, model aware essentially. Detect depth, stock not included is on top. So you can see the cut ends at the bottom of the solid model, and then include stock is the picture on the bottom. And what that'll do is that will push your cut all the way down to the bottom of your stock model automatically. So this is only going to work for stock modeling, but that's an automatic switch, so you don't have to figure out your depth to get to the bottom if you need be. Area rough seen some enhancements, and the big enhancements here is the linking parameters page is now updated to align with all of our 3D tool paths. So you're going to have all the options now in there if you do use area rough, highly optimized to help the lead in and lead outs of each cut. And we'll take a look at it in these sections here. And then apply and dirty toolpath display is now a new option. We'll see how we use this and potentially where you could use this to maybe fix up some bad toolpath motion. And transform stretch is a great way to adjust the containment boundary. This isn't anything new in 23, but I found it very useful for boundaries when I'm using OptiRough or surface finishing toolpath, so I will show you that. Equal scallop step-in. This is a big change here. This is for semi-finishing only. Now we have the ability in equal scallop to give it a step-in distance, and after we define a roughing tool that roughed out, in this case, a pocket, it'll go and look at them corners to see how much material is left over, and it'll do the step-in at that distance. This is very critical for maintaining even amounts of stock in them tight corners so you don't over-engage it when you come in to do the full finish pass. And then waterline optimize. Waterline seen some really nice change for optimize, and it's just a button in there. So we're going to take a look at it. It's obviously very easy to use, and we'll see the differences that we will see by turning on the optimize button. So we're going to start with OptiRough, and kind of where I was going here is to utilize these new functions, you're really going to have to start to utilize stock modeling. So stock modeling is going to become more important. A lot of these functions only work off of stock modeling. So in this case here, after Op1, I have my stock model built. Now if we look at the stock model, the way that Mastercam worked previous to 2023 is where my mouse is here. If I were to draw a line straight down, it's called the waterline effect. And if water were to fall over the side, it still calculates all of this material underneath these shelves as material to cut, and that's where we were getting our extra cuts if you didn't get unique on how you programmed. So in the past, they used to program from here to here with a tool path, and then here to here with the tool path, and then I could eliminate all my air cuts, but it took an additional tool path and additional time on my side. So in 2023, they fixed this. Now, once again, you're going to have a stock model. So let's look at this before DTEC stock. So this is previous to 2023. If I were to do this project and I would just say, go ahead and look at the stock model and cut my finished part, this is what I would get. And I would get all these cuts here on the end that are essentially air cuts along here. Now, that's not very efficient, obviously. So once again, we could get around this. We could eliminate that by getting unique on how we program. But now in 2023, we have a switch directly for this. So this is going to be in toolpath number 3 here. Let's go ahead and take a look at where it is. So everything in Opti stayed the same with the exception here in the stock page. So I go to the stock and turn on rest material. Your options here are in this drop-down. All groups, toolpath group, machine group, or one other operation. In this case, I have one other operation picked, and I have Detect Undercut Stock selected. That's the new button here for OptiRough. Now, once again, you have to look at a stock model. So in that case, I'm looking at my Op1 stock model. So it looks at that, and if we look at this toolpath, now we're seeing a big difference. So here's previous, here's now. And if I turn the stock model back on, we'll see that it's a very efficient cut now. Now I have cuts on this corner because there's a chamfer on that corner. So it does see stock there. And you will notice that I have a cut down here. What happened here is this is a depth cut. So here's my first depth cut. Then I had this additional material here. So it went to the next depth cut, and that's how it calculates. But I get no cuts underneath that where there is absolutely no stock, which is going to save me quite a bit of cycle time and a lot of programming also, so I don't have to deal with that. So the Detect Undercut Stock is huge. Make sure you're utilizing that when you are using stock models. So that's where it's going to come into play there. Other changes in here, we can look at auto detect Z limits here. So I'll go to my levels here and look at a little different part for this one. So I have this part on here, and I have my origin set to the top of the part. Now right now the way I have this set is I'm just doing an OptiRough around there. So it's cutting it all the way to the bottom. So what if I come in here and I say, you know what, I'm going to move this part. So I grab this part, I'm just going to move it. So now it's no longer in the same area. Now my origin's up in the air. Now with Auto Detect Z limits on, and I'll show you where this is in the steep shallow page. When I have this one on, it grays everything out, and grayed out in Mastercam means you can't alter it. So with that change, it automatically sees that model or your selection, and it knows if it's in the same area that you had it. If you start moving stuff around, it's an automatic update. So I don't have to come back in here and change my Z depths if I don't want to, like I needed to previous to 2023. So if I green check out of here and regenerate this, now you're going to see without really doing anything, all I'm doing here is regenerating the tool path. I'm going to get cut all the way down to the bottom of my part. And that's going to just make life easy if you're an end user that, you know, potentially moves stuff after the fact. Or if you have, let's say you have 5 or 6, 7, 10 different OptiRoughs in there and you move something, you don't have to go update the Z's on all of them. You can just go ahead and say automatically detect Z limits. And now we're looking at my calculation, and I'm cutting to the bottom again. Without changing any numbers, Mastercam will automatically detect that for me. So a nice little change there as an option. And we'll go back to the console mode here. We're going to look at area rough. So area rough, seen some changes here. So this is area rough, and where area rough really can play is face mills. So face mills where you're doing a lot of Z depth cuts. Maybe you can't engage, you know, too much, usually around 100 thousandths. Area rough can be a player for them styles of cuts. Now, in some cases there, the lead in and lead out was lacking. You didn't really have a whole lot. So in this case here, I have a stock model, and that's where I'm currently at. And just for calculation time, I'm going to just focus in on this corner here. I have this extra material sitting in this corner. So if we go into area rough, now we're going to just pretty much take a look at the linking. So the linking parameters is all updated to our new 3D stuff. So you're going to have all sorts of options in here. For instance, if I want to change my lead in and lead out roll in, maybe I want to go bigger radius. Maybe I want to go 125 thousandths of a radius in there, a bigger roll in. I can just green check, and now I'm going to be updated on the screen here. So now I got these big roll ins to the cut. I'd also have an option to maybe extend my cuts, come in at different sweep angles, all sorts of stuff here. So potentially I can make some change here. My secondary lead would be this little roll in the end here. Maybe I put that at 100 thou. Green check, and now I'm getting a bigger cut out of there. So as you can see, with the linking parameter changes in 2023 with area rest roughing or area roughing in that case, you have full say on the cut. So there's no limitations there. The big change here is going to be this whole page. And you have everything pretty much on one page. It consolidated this. So you get your clearance planes, arc fit radiuses, that's for transitions. Keep tool down within, that's going to be your gap settings. Then you have some apply leads. That would be if you're extending the cuts off the ends. Trimming is on the bottom. And then you got your main lead. It's your bigger one. And your smaller lead is your smaller cut out of there. You can have separate lead in, lead outs, different numbers. So full say here on this page at this point. So that's a really nice change for area rough. And one thing I did here is I just constrained this to a bounding rectangle here. If I come back into here. And that's how I got that cut inside of there. I just have a boundary here. So just a nice little containment boundary just to give me a cut where I wanted it there for this example. Other than that, nothing else in here really changes. Steep shallow aligns with OptiRough now, so you have automatically detect depth. You also have the include stock option. I kind of talked about the include stock option. If you include stock, it'll push it down to the bottom of your stock model. It's important to note in here that include stock is not your stock setup, it's your stock model. So you have to be calling a stock model for it to push it all the way to the bottom of your stock model in this case. So that's the new change in here. Otherwise, everything else has stayed exactly the same as you're used to for area rough. And we're going to look at a couple more OptiRough options here. So there was another change for OptiRough. So in this case here, I'm going to machine out this triangle with OptiRough, okay? So if we look at this OptiRough and we go into this, there is change here. So you still have boundary chains. Boundary chains are going to be the same that you had previous. You can pick a boundary. You could go and select the wireframe around there, and you're going to get exactly what you had previous. So for example, if I go and I chain this going all the way around here, and I say come from the outside, and I green check, I'm going to get an outside strategy, exactly what I would assume, just like I've picked for many years now. And any legacy files that you have where you already have boundaries picked, they should come through. There should be no difference. So here's my cut, just like I would have done it previous to 2023. Now what I'm going to show you next is just a bunch of options. So there's that cut. So if we come in here, and let's say I get rid of the boundary. Now I have automatic boundaries here. I have none, silhouette, bounding rectangle, bounding circle. So if I go to none, and I green check. Now this is the result I'm going to get. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to bound my triangle tight, and whatever it sees to cut, it'll go ahead and put a cut from the outside there. So I'm only going to get a cut in these sections here because that's the only spot that I had material in there. So I didn't get no cut here because it's bound tight around there. So that's how none works right off the bat. Now what if I want to still get my cut all the way to the outside? You do have an option here, and it's going to come back to the stock page. So once again, stock model is going to become more prevalent here. If I go to one other operation, I have stock models built in here of a square block. So this red square here, I built a stock model out of that shape. So if I just go to that stock model, green check, and let this crunch, now what I'm going to do without selecting a boundary, I'm going to get exactly the same cut as if I did select a boundary. So this is another option, and you can see I got the same cut here. So I'm coming from the outside using the none option, but looking at a stock model. So I get the same pretty much cut there. So where Mastercam, I believe, is going here is instead of picking boundaries and making boundaries, potentially if you have a stock model, you can utilize the stock model and use that as its outside extents. Now what are some of the other options here? So you have silhouette. Silhouette is going to take a silhouette of your selection and use that as the outside boundary. The silhouette works the same way as we had before, so no really change there. Bounding rectangle. So one of the main things here is anytime that you go to the stock page and turn it on, you'll notice that your strategy grays out. And it's always a stay inside strategy. So what you always had to do is you always had to say, I need to come from the outside here and give it a little additional offset to be able to get your tool out there. So let's just go ahead to bounding rectangle, and we could include stock. Now, once again, include stock is not your stock setup. Include stock is going to be a stock model. So if I have include stock on and bounding rectangle on, what I can do is I can green check. And now we're going to get a cut that is kind of doing what we're telling it to do. Look at the stock model now for our outside extents, but we're going to have to stay on the inside here. So we'll let this crunch, and we'll see what our tool pattern looks like. And she's crunching along here. Now, as far as these options go, do you have to use the new options? No. Potentially, maybe they will help you in some situations. So here's the cut. And it's going to be an inside strategy once again because I'm in a, I'm looking at a stock model, looking at the stock page. And now you'll see that I stayed inside. I cut to the center. Once again, if I wanted to get to the outside, I'd still have my same controls here, inside, center, outside. And then bounding circle is kind of the same situation here. I have include stock as an option. Now if I bound that as a circle, maybe I can go and I got a circular stock model here. So this one's round on this green here. So if I regenerate that, now I will get a cut that kind of looks at my stock model and does a circular pattern. So there I'm at there. Now one other thing I could do with this is, maybe go to the outside, plus 0.1. Now that would force it outside just by looking at the stock model here. Give me a little bit different look here, potentially. So now it's getting a full cut on the outside. So that's kind of maybe where the power is there with stock modeling is now I can utilize stock models without looking at boundaries potentially. But once again, you can utilize what you want, how you want, and you can still use it the same old way. If you don't want any of this, you can leave it to none and pick a boundary if you want. You don't need to use a stock model if you don't want to. But you got to start picking boundaries there to probably get what you want there. So keep them options in mind here. That is a big change for OptiRough. I would try with none to start, and then if you need to alter from there, maybe try them other options, see if they work better for you. And we're going to go back here to this console mold. And we're going to look at equal scallop. So the equal scallop, we're going to focus in here. I got two different size radiuses in this part. And we're going to look at a way that we could have done this previous. So previously, we could have done this in a older style scallop rest pass. So scallop toolpath, pick the whole pocket. I came in here to stock and trim to stock, and I just defined a roughing tool. So what that does is that automatically knows what's left over and it goes and puts a cut in there. So now I got these nice cuts in here, but the problem is I'm cutting right up to size here. I'm not leaving any stock in them corners. So I really get one cut in here, which I get nice motion, you know, to semi-finish that out, but I can't do a step in unless I do multiple tool paths. So in 2023, what we have here, and I'm going to segregate this down to just this corner here, is just for calculation time, is an equal scallop in the stock page once again. We can come in here and trim the stock. We can define a roughing tool that roughed it out, and then we can tell it to give a step-in distance. Now right now I have 5/1000ths of step-in distance. You could also give it a maximum step-ins. So this option is only going to open up an equal scallop. So now if we look at this, now what I'm getting is I'm getting a cut away from the stock, and then the next cuts will work in that step-up value. So once this runs through, now I have really two cuts out here. See the range there? I got one cut out here, one cut in here. Now this is only for semi-roughing. So this is only going to really apply to semi-roughing, but this is going to give the ability to do step-ins where that material is left over, which can be really key to getting corners cleaned out in more complex parts or issues with corner radiuses. So definitely go back and try this. Now, the only other thing I really need to show you here is my boundary. So how I just got that to cut there is I had a containment boundary as a normal containment boundary. Now one thing I did pick up here that I thought is really useful is what if I want to extend that or move that bounding box out, which I do quite a few times. Instead of remaking it or retrimming the lines, you can go to stretch, and the trick here is just to pick 3 entities. So instead of picking it all, you'll always leave the one you want to stretch from back and selection. And now what I get is I get this dynamic gnomon on here. So now I can drag this. I could drag it a distance. I could drag it to a point. Now that I move that, all I have to do is green check. My tool path will go dirty. And if I regenerate that tool path, now my tool path will extend out in there. So that's just a little tip. It's nothing new in 23. It's just a way to manipulate a potential containment boundary without redrawing it like we don't want you to do. So we'll let this crunch, and then we'll see that my cut now extends in the Y positive direction in this little pocket here. And there it is. So extended my cutout pretty quickly without me doing a lot of work. So it's a nice feature. And then the last one we're going to take a look at here is we're going to look at our advanced display. So I'm going to go back to my tool paths here. And here's a equal scallop tool path that looks just absolutely horrendous in here. So I have a lot of problems. Now, where this next option comes into play potentially is this case here where you have really dirty toolpath motion and you're not quite sure how to fix it. So what this can do is kind of give you an option here to just kind of hold it back. Now where it is it's under view. It's going to be an advanced display, and it's called dirty toolpath motion right here. And I can check it on or off if I want. So if I check it on, and I'm going to come back into this toolpath, I'm just going to make a subtle change. And really what I need to do is I need to have generate toolpath off. I need to make a subtle change. I'm going to green check. What that's going to do is that's going to make that toolpath dirty. As you can see over here, it has a red X on it. It's dirty toolpath. So if I look at this, now my lines are black. So for me, a situation where you could use this, I'm going to copy this dirty toolpath down one. So I'm just going to right click, copy down, and I'm going to come back into here. And I'm going to turn on generate toolpath. And I'm going to say, you know what, I wonder what my problem was in here. And I could start detecting this. So I could start changing this, check it to what the dirty one was, check it to what the dirty one was. And maybe I could come in here and I could say, you know what, I think this is it. My keep tool down is too small. So if I green check, now what I can do is I'm going to get a tool path, and I got a clean tool path. But now I can go back to this one and look at that, say, okay, a little better. This one looks good. Or maybe I'm comparing cuts potentially this way too. What did I have? What do I have now? Where is the breakdown potentially? So just a little bit of a view option there for you to kind of reference back what was dirty if you keep it, and what did I do to change and fix that. Now, the main thing here is you have to leave it dirty. So that's going to be the kicker there that you have to remember. And if you can utilize it other ways, that's great, you know, and it's just another option, another tool in the toolbox, I like to say. And then waterline. So waterline is a great tool path. Now in waterline, you know, keep in mind you do have maximum stock engagement here. That's a helper, kind of like our equal scallop step-ins. So that's the max it can engage into the corners. So keep that one in mind. But otherwise here, the only change in waterline is the optimize button here sitting right here. So I'm just going to leave it stock here, just like we had previous to this. And I'm going to go ahead and backplot this, and we'll take a look at the downfall here. So as I go and run this, these purple lines on the screen are transition moves. Now if we look in there, look at all of them transitions back and forth. It's really not an optimized toolpath. It's skipping all over the place. So that was a big waste of motion in your machine, and wasted motion is wasted time. So if I go to the same exact toolpath and just turn on optimize, that's all I did is turn on optimize. Now we're going to see a completely different cut pattern here. So my cuts are going to stay in this region. It's going to optimize the cutter till they get down to a floor. So I'm all the way down to the floor, all the way to the floor. And as it works, you're going to see how much more efficient this is right off the bat. So now I'm not wasting any transitional time. I'm fully getting through the cut in that region and then moving on to the next. So great option here. This should probably almost always be defaulted on. Now, we did have bottom to top. Now I turn optimize off. Now where can it help me in these cases? Here is potentially now I'm working up, and now like a situation like this right here is where this would probably come into play. So now I'm starting to get these transitions again where it's looking at the depth cuts. It's not necessarily looking at the region. So now I get all of these additional purple lines, entries, exits, a lot of wasted motion there again. So even with bottom to top, if I come back in here and just optimize it, green check, now we're going to see a whole different beast here as far as a tool path, as far as being a lot more efficient. Now I'm not getting all of them transition lines. It's going to come back over. Once it gets done, now I do these regions, and then I move on, which gives me a really clean tool path. The time savings here just by turning on optimize is probably huge. So this is a great change. And waterline is one of the best tool paths to use on any vertical walls by far. So one of the easiest and one of the best. So hopefully you can utilize that information going forward. And that's going to do it for our 3D. The big changes are going to be in OptiRough. Waterline here has optimize. Equal Scallop has its step-ins. So hopefully you can go back and check some of these options out, and hopefully they can help you out if you're utilizing them tool paths. And remember, stock model is going to become a bigger player here for OptiRough by far to be able to look at all of that stuff. And as always, thanks for watching our videos, and our phone number here is 952-361-5598 for any technical support help.